podcast. We actually have very exciting women here, and I want to first go into announcements first. Since this is our first event, we did have a few hiccups with parking. So if anyone does, by any chance, get a ticket, there is a number to call.
Ken's going to pay for it.
I will pay for it. There is a number to call. You might want to write this down or put this in your phone. It's 244-5911. We did make a call, so it should be taken care of, but this is just in case. But I first want to say thank you for coming, and we do have a couple of sponsors tonight that I want to acknowledge. We had Coca-Cola actually donate all the beverages tonight, and we also have Me and Ed's Pizzeria donating 10 pizzas tonight, so thank you so much for that. And I first want to introduce the founder and president of the Pie Shop, Mark Jackson, and he has been an engineer for over 20 years. He also is the president and founder of Blue Dolphin Design and Engineering. He basically has built his own business from the ground up. He's an entrepreneur, startup entrepreneur, and he's a successful businessman in Fresno. And he's grown his business to what it is now, which is amazing. And then he spawned the Pie Shop, the nonprofit portion, arm of Pie Shop, and to give back to the community. That's why we're here. The Pie Shop is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs start up businesses with their product ideas. So this is what this event is for. It's for networking, for entrepreneurs and startup businesses. And I'm very happy to be a part of this organization. I am Ken Pelisseri. I'm the manager of the Pie Shop. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy everyone made it out tonight, so give yourself a hand. Thank you. So a little bit about Mark. I can go on. There's probably 2 pages, but I'm going to cut it down to 1 paragraph. He's a mechanical engineer, graduated from Cal Poly, and he's an inventor of several U.S. patents and has assisted many inventors with developing their ideas. He is on an advisory board for the Industrial Technology Department at Fresno State, Mechanical Engineering Department at Cal Poly, and Patino High School, as well as many others. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Mark Jackson.
You guys hear me?
Yep.
Well, welcome everybody, and thank you, Kent. It was a nice introduction. I think I wrote it. I also wanted to really thank Fresno City College for partnering with us. Their entrepreneurial program is pretty tremendous, and we're trying to really create an entrepreneurial atmosphere here. We really believe that Fresno should be known and can be known as the entrepreneurial capital of at least California. There's no reason why it should never happen. So we're striving to try to make that happen with everything that's been going on. And I really appreciate Kent's help with the Pie Shop trying to make that happen. So I'd like to introduce our panel. We have a very interesting panel. And these people I've just met for the first time, and this should be pretty cool stuff. First I want to introduce Debbie Hunsaker, in the far end there. She's the president and CEO at Alert-A-Light and the president of Cymax. Let's see, Alert-A-Light does business in all areas related to traffic control and construction work zones. You have to excuse me from reading from this, but it'll come across better that way. Including emergency response services and has specialized in events of all types and sizes. Debbie has been serving the contractor since 1971, her family has, and is proud to be a woman business enterprise. Cymax is also a part of her company family, offering everything from construction area signs to banners to vehicle wraps to magnetics to lettering and everything in between. She's a graduate of Fresno City College, and she has been for decades deeply committed and involved in the Fresno Chamber of Commerce, and is a board member of the Chamber as well as the Central California Builders Exchange, CenCal Business Finance Group, the Central Valley Crime Stoppers, as well as many others. Too many to list right here. Next, I'd like to introduce Kelly Fitzpatrick Bennett. Kelly is owner and inventor of Bumpets. She's also currently the owner and does sales and marketing managing for Sequoia Sandwich Company. Kelly is the inventress of the Bumpet, the as seen on TV home run selling product with over 10 million Bumpets sold worldwide. Kelly has been featured twice in the Wall Street Journal. She's been talked about on most daytime talk shows and covered on most evening talk shows and dozens of local and national news shows. Has been mentioned and featured in most major fashions and women's magazines over the years. Katy Perry wore a Bumpet to the 2016 Golden Globes and discussed her Bumpet on the red carpet with Jennifer Lawrence and made our year too. Pretty cool thing. So a very substantial effort. Right here next to me is Deena Papagni. She's president at Touch of Class Transportation Incorporated, and many of you have heard that name. In the complex world of personal logistics, Touch of Class has helped people retain their independence. For 3 decades, her well-known service includes providing passengers with rides to their final destinations after wedding receptions, to and from local and regional sporting events, proms, quinceaneras, birthdays, and social functions of all kinds. Additionally, her non-emergency medical transportation services were established to benefit ambulatory passengers who need ground transport to medical appointments in proximities close or far from their home. Deena is an MBA graduate of the California State University of Fresno, right here. So all very local, wonderful people. So thanks, I appreciate you guys all showing up, and it's no accident that they're all women, and something everybody should know. There's a big drive, and many people are aware of this, but currently there's a pretty substantial drive here in the Central Valley to really showcase and support minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses. And there's a lot of money being invested to make sure that happens, because we truly believe that having a diverse economy and a diverse entrepreneurial atmosphere is what will lead to success here. So that's one of the reasons why we have this panel here today. So, welcome. Okay, so let's get started. I'll ask a couple questions, and if each of you can kind of give your background, because it's all different on what it's all about. So we'll start with Deena. The first question, so what was it that sparked, what created that excitement that made you want to start this business or get into this business? I mean, as an entrepreneur, what was it that, there was some event, or what was it that caused you to take this up, this crazy life of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So in college, I remember my girlfriends and I renting a limo and going out for one of our birthdays, and I just could not believe the concept of it, and this was in the early 80s, and I'm like, this is the most amazing, coolest thing. We can go where we want, we don't have to stop our party, we don't have to stop and worry about who's driving, we don't have to worry about getting into a car with somebody who may or may not have been drinking or not even thinking about who's driving the car, dying, getting into an accident. I will never forget my very first limo ride and how amazed and confused I was at the concept of what they did to this car to make it look the way it did and be as functional as it was. So my first job after I graduated with my undergraduate degree, I received, through a series of twists and turns, an offer from a corporation located in the Bay Area who heard that I was an incredible salesperson, and I'd only been with this company for 4 months. And they offered me a job as director of marketing, which as a 21-year-old, I was thrilled because that job generally went to any man over the age of 50 or 60, and it was a country club job. And I don't think director of marketing positions even exist anymore. So, thrilled, I went and I took this test they had, which was basically, 1, 2, 5, 4, 3, 6, put them in order from lowest to highest and highest to lowest. I passed. And so they offered the job to me, and I started working for this, I don't even know if I would call it a company. They have 2 very small, very old, with lots of Bondo all over these vehicles, 6-passenger limousines with 189,000 miles each, and I was supposed to somehow market these gems to Fresno as vehicles that they would want to be in with their blue and maroon velour cigarette burn hole interiors. And so, but it wasn't really just that type of, it wasn't a marketing job, it was actually running this company, trying to understand the dynamics of how to do everything for less money than was being paid so that these absentee owners could actually see a profit. So what happened was we actually made money within the first 6 months of me doing this job. And they had been losing substantial amounts of money before. And so one day the owner, Dave Pansini, came to Fresno and he walked in and he said, "We're selling the company." And I was like, "You can't sell the company," because I just finished my undergrad and had started my graduate degree, and I thought, nobody's going to hire me having 2 jobs in less than a year. And he's like, "Well, we think we can sell it to you." And I basically have just gotten over the hump of being a child. And so I was like, that would be awesome. And so a few months later, I, had my brand new blue suit that I had to interview with Merck Sharp and Doe Pharmaceuticals after college, and I got into my bright red, brand new Chevy S10 baby blazer that I bought at Hallowell Chevrolet with my college degree, because they had a program that was, your degree is your credit. You show them your college degree, you pick any vehicle on their lot, and they will finance it for you. Pretty amazing. Drove over the bridge, walked into their humongous boardroom with a huge briefcase and a little contract, popped it open like I was a corporate executive, and made them sign it first. And I'm sure now that I think about it, they were probably laughing at me the whole time because there truly was nothing to buy. And one of the gentlemen said, "You're a very good business person." I was like, I am a great business person, not realizing what had actually just happened. And the funny thing was, after the contract was signed by them and then by me, my friends were waiting in Fresno because I was going to own a limo company and we were going to go out and party all night long.
What else would you do with the limo company?
I was just thinking. But I will tell you that the sense of responsibility and the 258,600 million pound weight that I felt on my shoulders driving back across the bridge that day, I realized this wasn't a joke, and I had a lot of work to do, and it wasn't anybody else's responsibility to keep this company going, and I've been terrified of failure ever since.
Wow, that was easy.
How many years ago?
31.
31 years ago?
Uh-huh. I'm 53.
Got my draw.
Yeah. So Kelly, let's talk about your path. I mean, what got you excited? I mean, I remember when I first met you and you had this wonderful idea. And so, I mean, what was the impetus behind this whole thing? It just...
First, I used to be a hairstylist in my house. At the end of my house, I had a little salon in Kingsburg, out in the country. And everybody wanted their hair to have volume in the back. And nobody could do it on their was in college and she worked at Abercrombie and she was Miss All That and a bag of chips. And so it was 10:30 at night, so I was already in bed for 2 hours. And I got up and I went in her room and I said, Kat, you know, I have this thing that I invented before, this thing that would make your hair big, and I told her about it. She said, Mom, that is so cool. So her and her sorority sisters, well, first we, as you know, got some purple Velcro and popsicle sticks and made a
Yeah, I
prototype.
remember that prototype.
And we
Do
don't
you still
have,
have that? I wish I could.
do.
Oh, that's awesome.
we didn't have man tools, but we had a gas stove by the grace of God and plastic silverware that could melt in that glass stove so that we could go that. Anyway, that's how we first began, and then we told a couple of friends just to see, like, did they think it was cool, and people went crazy over it.
Yeah, I remember going through the process because we helped Kelly with some of the
Yep.
development. And she came to us with the first idea, which was kind of some fingers that held things in place. And we figured out a prototype, and it was, you know, it was okay. And then I remember you saying, well, we have this other idea. And that's the one that ended up becoming the
Simple.
product that was actually very simple
Yeah.
and ended up being the bump it.
So I went to Mark and to be the engineer to design it all, and I know what he thought. It's a man's world. He's like, yeah, okay. And then when he finally got on board was when the prototype was done, and his wife was like, "Are you kidding me?" And she wanted to be there when I got the prototype and put it in her hair. That's when he finally understood. Like, I guess girls like it.
Well, the one thing from my point of view is understanding the size or what the market is. That's a tough thing. I mean, I may have an opinion, but especially after having dealt with Kelly, I always learn to never judge what that market might be, because you really, you either don't know, or somebody's going to be an expert at it.
Yeah.
But I refuse to judge an idea. I'm an engineer, so I may be kind of left and right brain, but I wouldn't trust me to evaluate products, so unless they were a car or something. Yeah, so yeah, no, fantastic. I mean, I tell the story all the time about you coming in, and I thought, well, okay, everybody thinks it's great, all right, let's work on this, you know. Anyways, it did well.
Yeah, it was a fun, long, but it went quickly, but I could tell the whole story, but it was a fun, good ride, and after some revisions, it was a home run.
Yeah. Okay, so
How many thousands of units?
10 million units or so.
10 million.
Yeah, at what, $9.95 or whatever it was? About
They
$100
started
million.
at $19.95.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah.
On Home Shopping Network or QVC, or what was it?
On a As Seen on TV
As Seen on TV,
commercial
yeah.
that my son made, and my daughter and her
Your daughter.
sorority sisters,
Mhm.
$50 plus Panda
Yeah,
Express
there you
was
go.
the going rate.
There you go.
I remember
Awesome.
that commercial.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So, Debbie, you've had a real easy path. I've been talking to you earlier. Anyways, no, I'm just kidding. But so I want to hear how. I mean, I know it was a family thing, but really, why did you get into this? I mean, what made you go insane to decide to do this?
The easy explanation is child labor and a father that made you do it whether you wanted to or not.
Yeah, there's no.
That's how I started.
There's no child labor laws for family. That's right. That's what it
Yeah.
used to be.
Nowadays, they'd probably go to prison,
They
but
probably
back
would.
then, there wasn't. And so I started when I was 16. I was the only one who had a license, so I was in charge of going back and forth to McDonald's and feeding us as we made barricades. I'm in traffic control, so a lot of people know us whenever they're trying to go somewhere and there's stuff in the way because of construction and you can't get there, and that's what we do. So my dad started this back in 1971, and myself and my younger brother and sister got to learn how to make barricades and use glass beads and make signs and all these things that now there's better technology, or they're already made, and for free. We were lucky enough to do that for free. So when I was younger, I never in a million years ever thought that I would get into the barricade business and construction, because that's not, first of all, it's a very male-dominated industry, and traffic control is a very interesting, stressful industry. So my dad passed away in 1991, and I had started at the business when I actually started getting paid minimum wage, never anything more than that. And I worked my way up. I started out sweeping the floors and taking the garbage out. In fact, my dad didn't want to hire me because he didn't like my boyfriend at the time. So that was why. But my mom made him, so he hired me, and I literally started at the bottom with taking out the garbage, doing the filing. Then I worked my way up to doing the billings, and then I started working closer to him. Then they fired the bookkeeper and said, "You want to be the bookkeeper?" And I go, "Sure." I had one semester of record keeping in high school back then. And so I taught myself, and then we have very good CPAs, and they help teach me. They don't make CPAs like that anymore that can work with you. Now it's the hands-off and whatever, and that's too bad because they help you learn to do it the right way. And so as time went on, I got more and more involved, handling all the legal things, the insurance, the banking, the HR part of it. In fact, he loved doing that to me. "You need to go fire that person." So I always got to do that part of it. So when he passed away, we found out with very short notice. My dad was only 61 years old when he died, and we had less than 6 months' notice that he was going to, and we had no will, no partnership agreement, no nothing. And so guess who got tasked with doing that? I'm dealing with my dad, who's going to lose my dad, and then having to keep the business going and doing the things that I had to do. And at that time, my older brother was out of the service, so it was him, my younger brother and sister, myself. We each were equal partners, and then my dad owned the majority. So the way that it worked, when he passed away, it was evenly distributed amongst us kids. So back then, because it's hard to find minorities and women and to work in the construction industry, that they started pushing for more and more of those kind of companies getting set-aside contracts, or they wanted to increase the participation. So at that time, I bought out part of my brother's shares, which made me the majority owner, and then it also qualified us as a woman-owned business. And I could prove that I ran the day-to-day operations. So over time, I bought all of them out, and I wonder still today, did I get the short end of the stick? Or did they get the short end of the stick? But it's been an interesting journey. It's a very rewarding experience. We do really cool stuff, whether it's like I was sharing with Mark and the other panelists. We just got done doing the Two Cities Marathon. We do all the traffic control for that. We do it for Fresno State football games. We do the Fresno Fair. We do Morro Bay Triathlon. We do the San Luis Obispo Marathon. I mean, just Christmas Tree Lane. There's so many things that we do. And when it's all said and done, it's very nerve-wracking during the process. But when it's all said and done, to look back and see everything that it takes to do that, because it takes a lot of stuff. I can't remember how many barricades and stuff. But just for the Clovis Christmas parade, or the Clovis Rodeo Parade, I think we have 2,500 barricades out there. Only just barricades. That doesn't include all the message boards and signboards and no parking signs and all of that. It's quite a endeavor. And we have like 26 people out on the roads at one time, just shutting stuff down. We've shut down Highway 168 for that event, and that's the rewarding stuff. And we've also worked a lot with the police department. I've always been interested in law enforcement, and I always say when I'm second, like I'm going to be a detective because I'm really good at it. Ask my crew, it makes them mad, but I'm good at it. So, and that's why I looked at, I always wanted to be a teacher, or I wanted to be involved in law enforcement, and it didn't dawn on me until probably within the last few years. I have the opportunity to be a teacher because I could teach my crew, and I could come and I could do things like this that hopefully someone could walk away with something. And then I'm a good detective because if anyone does anything wrong, they're going to find out really, really quickly that I am good at figuring it out. And then working closely with PD, that helps.
Well, we do appreciate you being here, and that is part of what we're trying to do, is give insights on what it takes. Life is not Shark Tank, so not that simple. So speaking of things not simple, let's talk about some of the major challenges and roadblocks. Maybe Kelly can start with what those were.
You know what, I'm an optimist, thankfully, because we're shut down at every single turn. We invented them, and I was so positive everybody would love them because that was the big style. So I got them made, put them in my basket, and I put a cute little pink fabric on it, and I walked right into got chalks, and they kicked me out. So I walk in there every week.
And look who's
twice a
around
week.
now, gotcha.
Every week, every single week I go in twice, waiting for them to notice me or figure out that it was something cool, the buyers, and I would always go in and do demos, like I do them blindfolded. And I knew they'd kick me out, but I just try to get my foot in the door. We made a commercial. The folks who make a commercial for us, seen on TV, said our product was too silly, and then the company that would do it was $200,000. So we said, well, we can't afford that. And then a local TV channel was going to do it, and they actually made me one, and it said, like, hi, bumpets are good for your hair. Put one in. Do it quickly. I don't know what it said. Something dumb. And not motivating. So then we had to learn how to write a commercial, research. It was just every single thing. We didn't know anything about it. Setting up a distribution center. My kids quit college to help. But the biggest thing is we hired a media company finally who buys remnant ads for us to go on these little 2-minute commercials. And I'm sorry, 2-minute and 30-second commercials. And we hired them, and it was expensive. It was like $8,000 a week, and we worked our way up to $28,000 a week. But we weren't getting the return because everybody says they know what's best for you. But I'd really done so much market research. I thought, but I think I know the right TV channels to be on. They said, no, these are the ones because these are the cheap ones. Well, cheap isn't best, as you all know. Anyways, one sad night that we were at the end of our money. We'd gotten a contract with HSN. We felt successful, but we're spending more than we were making. And it was a Friday. It was a cold, dark Friday in October. And the media company called me and fired me. They said, everything's not a commercial success, and you are not.
Wow.
And I said, please don't do that. I mean, you can't do that. I had saved $300,000. I have all that plus credit card debt. Please, you can't do that. And they said, stop begging. They kind of hung up on me. But the media ads run through Sunday at midnight. Anyways, so Sunday at 10 o'clock, I was just leaving my group of friends. We went and saw a movie, and I was driving home, and it was, honest to God, it was the darkest night that Fresno has ever seen in its life, and I was crying because I thought, how could I? We had to fire everybody the next day. We had to let everybody lay them off, and my son was still working, and he said, Mom, the computer's broken now, but we'll get through it. But I'm getting, we had a Yahoo stories, and it's just a mess. I'm getting so much spam, and he was just getting hundreds of messages, and so he was going to fix that. So I was just crying, and then he called me back 15 minutes later, and it hadn't been a mistake. We got 60,000 orders, and finally, they let me go on one commercial on MTV at 9:45 on Sunday night. 60,000 orders, and so guess what I did? All you ladies will know what I did the next day.
I don't know.
No, I called that lady and just smiled on the phone. Anyways, they said, come back. I said, heck no. And then I got with a different media agency that understood the product. And then it was just so fast and furious from then out. But with every success comes a huge problem. If you're too successful, you're going to have knockoffs. And I read a book about that. And then it starts getting real scary real fast.
Yeah.
So we partnered up with someone real big, with Snuggies
No, it's interesting, but is it, most entrepreneurs quit right before
Yes.
they'll make it? And
Mhm.
that's the thing, is if you quit, then you're guaranteed not to make it. I've been described as very tenacious, and sometimes I think that's a sickness, but you have to have that kind of spirit really to
Yeah.
carry through when there's issues, because everything, there's always problems.
Yeah, we went to New York on editors' tours. We went to all the major fashion magazines, and you're supposed to sit there and introduce your product, but I brought them with me, say, can I fix your hair?
Oh, yeah.
And they would all let me. They're all good ladies, and they love hair. So it was really, really being proactive. And I want to say that's the biggest thing of being an entrepreneur is don't stop. If people tell you no, it's just the easy thing for them to tell you to get you to be quiet.
Yeah.
But don't be quiet.
Very good, good lesson. Don't stop, don't give up. Very cool. Yeah. So, Deena, what stands out in your mind that the big challenges,
I think labor. I think people that you work with, people who work for you, and then all of your customers, of course, are people that you work for. I think people that you work with in your company who have approximately the same amount of responsibility, if they're really hard workers, sometimes they feel more proprietary than you do, and it's almost like their understanding of the company or their ideology is better than yours. But the way that I've handled that in the past is, that person may be correct for that portion of the company, but as an entrepreneur, you have to look at your company as a whole, and you have to have an incredible view not only of how to make each department function well and smoothly, but how to make all four wheels on the car turn at the same speed. So if you have one department that is functioning at a different capacity than another department, you don't have symmetry amongst your departments, and you don't have equilibrium, and you can't succeed. So I think it's really important to make sure that people understand that the whole company is the most important thing. I think people who work for you, that's probably my greatest challenge is I want people to love what they do. And I think that is inherently a female trait. I want people to come to work and to understand how important the service that they provide is. That every time they do a vehicle pre-trip inspection, every time they transport a passenger, whether that person is a workers' comp patient or an employee of a multi-million or billion-dollar company, I want them to understand that we need them to do their job and to do it well, that everybody needs to be safe and everybody needs to be happy. Our clients need to know that we truly care, that they are receiving the service that they envisioned that they would receive. Satisfying clients, 99% of the time you can. 1% of the time you can't. And there has to be a point in your life where as an entrepreneur, just like as a parent, you have to be willing to let go of a client who is costing you more in time and resources and damaging your company more than they're bringing to the table. Even if they're a great client and everybody wants that client, let them go, and you would be amazed at how fast your company will springboard forward without that adversity becoming part of your company. Interpersonally, I think things like having a balance in your life, your social life, your family, your company. There are times that you have to pick, and you can't always pick your company, and you can't always pick your family. However, you can always pick to be a really great communicator and let people understand what it is that you can do. We have had such a challenge with labor recently. The vaping thing has been an issue. People who want to vape at work, not the chauffeurs, but that has its own issues. But, you know, cell phones have become the most frustrating problem. It is unbelievable that adults, teens, 20-somethings, 30-somethings, people cannot function without their cell phone. It's literally like their beating heart and their brain, and it's this piece of plastic and glass. And people lose their jobs over their love of their cell phone. But when you hire people to do a job and you pay them, and you know, labor's not getting less expensive in California, and then you add your workers' comp and you add your payroll taxes. So we recently, it's a battle I couldn't fight anymore. I wasn't willing to fight anymore. And I subcontracted our entire reservations department to a company that managed its own employees. So we pay them. I don't deal with those problems anymore. Everything's great. Same problem we had with our car washer. One of the buildings that I built in Madera, we had our own drive-through limo wash, which was fabulous. But then we had to move closer to the airport because we needed proximity to lessen our fuel and our labor cost. So we started hiring and training car washers again. A whole nother problem. So after about a year and a half of this personnel issue, we subcontracted and hired a company. So sometimes you have to pay more money to give yourself sanity and freedom so that you, as the leader of your corporation, can overcome all of these random and bizarre hurdles that will come your way. And you can have freedom of thought 2 hours a day with nothing to do so that you can envision your future, your company's future, and lead the company to become bigger or smaller, whatever you want. But you have to preserve your own self and your own sanity.
That's good points. It brought up a few good points, one of them being that occasionally you have to fire your customer. And I know we have definitely had to do that. And yes, our life gets better after that happens. And I know Debbie and I were talking before this. She was talking about high-speed rail and how it looked at it in the beginning as a pretty good business deal. And we've had this for the same kind of thing where it looked like we were going to have a very good customer, a good deal, but it wasn't worth all the headache and heartache and the hassles. And so, I don't know, maybe you want to talk about those trials that you had now, like with high-speed rail and things like that have been happening, that it sort of changed the landscape of what it looked like originally.
Well, the whole idea of high-speed rail, and Clay's in the room, so he knows some of the things I've been through on the business, on the other side of it. But the whole idea of high-speed rail when it first started, and one of the promises was that it would do a couple of things. It would include small businesses, whether they be regular small businesses or minority small businesses, woman-owned, disabled, veteran, whatever it was. And then another thing that was in there was to make sure that the people of the valley got jobs. So we did, because we had one of the higher unemployment rates. Everyone knows that Fresno isn't as fortunate as LA or San Francisco with these big corporations there to subsidize things. So I've been involved from the very beginning on a statewide council that would go and talk to the high-speed rail folks and figure out how this was going to work. Well, at one point, they changed something, but they had to do it, the whole idea was to get it where more local folks would get the job opportunities before people from other states or whatever came in and filled these jobs. So it looked good, and I've known a number of people who have gotten contracts on the project, but what has happened as time's gone on is now, I think some of the requirements that they put on small businesses that do work on the project are so onerous that people now are saying, I'm not going to work on that. I did one thing on there, and it cost me more than I made. And I used to tell them, well, you just need to know the process. And I was kind of proud of myself because we got one of the first 2 contracts that came from the prime on CP1. So I thought, well, I've already been through this, and I would help people know how to do certain things. Only to find out that I think it's 4 or 5 or 405 years that it started, and we're not doing any work on the job, but we still have to keep doing all this paperwork. So there comes a time where you start looking at it as, I'm not making any money now, I'm losing money because the part I did back here 3-4 years ago, and I'm still having to do this paperwork on a weekly basis. Every week, even though I'm doing nothing on the job, there comes this point where you think that maybe that's not a good thing. And then another thing that I've been experiencing most recently is there's the primes, and those are the big guys out there that got the contracts, and then they have subs. And I'm considered a first-tier sub on one of the projects, 2 of the projects. But I'm also considered a third-tier or second-tier contractor on others. And what that means is there's another contractor that's prime, or their contracts with the prime and my contracts with that sub. So what I have learned, and I'm hoping that there's some education that happens when I'm going through this process, because this is a new thing I'm dealing with, is they don't always communicate. If our job as the subcontractor is to send the required documents to whoever we have the contract with. So if it's with the prime, then it goes to the prime. If it's with a sub of the prime, then it goes to the sub. Well, what I've learned recently is not everybody turns stuff in. So I'm getting stuff now out of the blue from 3 years ago saying that we never submitted our paperwork, when in fact we did. But the problem is I have to prove it. So I had to go back and try and reconstruct back from 2016, beginning of 2017, on a job that I was on only 4 days, one guy. We, after our costs, I bet we made $350 on that job. And it took me and 2 other key people in my company over 13 straight days trying to reconstruct and get all the information they required me to give them to prove that that's all I was there. So, and it was an innocent mistake. My gal, when she was doing the payrolls, because you have to do certified payroll, when you're done, you're not doing any more work on the job, you do what's called a final. So she didn't realize until a couple of months later, so she went back and did a revised final, only for them to say, oh, no, you got to give me stuff clear up until like now, like this year now, saying that we weren't on the job and prove that I wasn't on the job. So those are the kind of things that drive me crazy in my business. Government regulation, knowing the rules can change. So I tell people all the time, that's why I'm so active in things. Not only from a learning standpoint, but I will tell you, for those of you that think about going into business, and hopefully you do, networking is so critical. Because if you network with people, you get to know great people like Dawn Golick with the SBA. I love Dawn. Her and I first met when we were in leadership, Fresno class 18, the best class. And her and a couple of other gals, we were known as kind of the wild ones a little bit. We kind of made leadership Fresno really what it should be, a whole lot of fun. But we got in a lot of trouble, but we did that. But then I get opportunities like this. Because Don goes, Debbie and Kelly and Deena, she thinks of people who genuinely care about what they do and genuinely want to help other people, either by learning from our mistakes or learning about the things that have helped us survive. So I can't stress enough that it is so critical to be involved, not only in the industries that are directly part of what you do, but other ones too. I get asked all the time, why am I part of the Chamber of Commerce? I'll tell you why. I've been on the Chamber of Commerce board, I'm getting ready to turn out my 18th year. And most people think, well, what does the Chamber of Commerce do? Well, if it wasn't for the Chamber of Commerce, I wouldn't have met people like Clay, and I wouldn't have met all the political people I know. That's sometimes a good thing, sometimes not such a good thing. But you never know when you need people like that to bounce something off of, or what's your experience, or what can you do to help me, or what do I do? And while I hate to do that, there are times that I've had no choice. And a great example was when I was negotiating with high-speed rail on the other side, which is they took our business that we've been at for our location since 1973. And organizations like the EDC people I know that have had to deal with the high-speed rail taking their property aren't even aware of all the resources out there that can help them. So I try to be that advocate and tell them.
So,
And I talk a lot too.
That's all good. I know when I started out, I don't think I had an entrepreneurial kind of spirit. I'm a mechanical engineering major at Cal Poly, and it's like, started working in aerospace, and I thought, okay, business, those are the guys upstairs, it's the numbers, contracts, that's business. I'm down here, I'm just gonna be an engineer. And then I started realizing, and over the years, and especially more and more as time has gone by, as you mentioned, that business is almost entirely relationships. And you brought up a really good point, and that is the networking, how helpful it is to meet people, to get different resources and get different ideas. Really important points. It makes a big difference. So I think the final question we'll ask, so, you guys have been all doing this for a while and gone through different efforts. Deena, what would you do differently? What based on everything, if you now knowing now what you know now, is there anything you do differently? Or? That good.
There are always things we can do differently, but nobody can determine if that would create the same outcome or a different outcome, better or worse. But I can say, after 31 years, every day I love getting out of bed and going to work. To this day, I've loved my job every day, even the adverse parts that I've had to overcome situations that were unpleasant. I absolutely love what I do. I know I've landed exactly where I was supposed to be professionally. I have a great life, I have a great family, I have great friends, and I have a great business. And I'm proud of the company.
Very good. Kelly, what about you?
I think that I would have had the people who invented rapid prototyping do it a few years earlier. Save a lot of money.
Yeah.
The molds used to cost an absolute fortune.
Yes.
They were made out of steel. You couldn't even lift them.
Yes.
And now you can buy one at the...
Yeah. You can rapid prototype molds now, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would have taken greater control and believed in myself more. See, it was always at every turn where I didn't, that when I invented a secondary product and I said it needed to be this high, but the lady who was in charge of this project said, no, she thinks it needs to be this high, but I'm a hair expert and she's not. And so it failed. So, but somebody soon came along and knocked it off. And anyways, every single thing I think we should have done it, and I wish I would have hired more professionals to do things
tough decision for most
A lot.
entrepreneurs is to spend the money because you normally don't have it.
Well, it's scary because everybody wants these contracts to do things, and they want a piece of it, they want a percentage. And you can't just do that. I mean, you see on Shark Tank where they
Yeah.
want 50 cents per item. Well, let me tell you what, if you make 50 cents an item, you're the rich one.
Yeah.
Not, the other one's gonna be bankrupt. I mean, it doesn't work that way. They make it sound great. It's crap.
So, Debbie, what would you have done differently? Move, run? Yeah.
When I went through all the stuff, the high-speed rail, taking our location, I was having a hard time finding another place to move. And so I had to sell another one of my locations because property values on G Street. I lived in the low rent district, so going from having pretty much no rent payment to having to now replace that property, that would cost me way more than what they wanted to give me, was a scary process. I'm fortunate to have my husband in here with me tonight. He's very supportive, and if it wasn't for him, I don't know that I would have made it, because for the first time, because I'm like you, I'm an eternal optimist, and I'm just not going to fail. I'm not going to fail, because I hear my mother tell me all the time, oh yes you are, but I'm not. And, but more importantly, when we were going through this, and he knows that, I think that's the first time I've ever felt so low as I did, because they beat on me for 4 years and darn near bankrupted me. So, but I had a crew that stuck with me and worked so very, very hard, and at the end of the day, when you look around, you don't realize sometimes, and I'm sure you guys do this as well, that you sit back and you think of how many families depend on what you do every single day. And that you got to put your big girl panties on every single day and go with a smile and keep busting your behind and make it work. So I think to do something, what would I do differently would probably be to maybe, part of my problem is I trust people too much. Yet another part of my problem is how I look at that is if I ever get where I can't trust my people, then I shouldn't be in business. So I think that I'm a control freak. I'm a Aries. I'm a redhead, green-eyed, German Aries. So you can't get much more. I was grounded from age 13 to 18, by the way, because of something about my mouth, my mother would say. So I think that what I would have done differently is hired people that had more experience than I probably could afford. I think that's a careful thing. And then let them do their job. And I think that's one of my biggest faults, is because I have been burned, and when you've been burned, it makes it harder to do that. But I think that that's probably the best experience or advice I could give. Always hire someone smarter than you, which I do that, but you also got to let them do what they're doing, but sometimes it doesn't work. So you just got to get back on the horse and do it again. But eventually you'll get it right.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate everybody being here. I'd like to remind everybody that time is a man-made thing. It only exists for us. Unfortunately, it dictates a lot of what we do. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to be here and to be as present as possible and not on your cell phones. So,
Baby.
yeah. So I hope that you've learned a few things, and I know I have. As being an entrepreneur, you need to be open to learning constantly. It hasn't stopped for me, I know. So please, let's thanks our panel. Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions?
Oh, yes, and questions from the audience, sorry.
I have a question.
Hold on a second, let me get your mic. Thank you.
First of all, I can say that the trademark of Allure Light, not the version on the shirt, but like the one that's on some of the products, is so burned in my mind. I've been seeing it the whole time you've been up there. I know exactly. I know your company. I just want to let you know that. I would love to get a limo from your company to take my wife out. I can see how the way you think about the service that you provide makes your company better because you actually understand why your customers want to come to you for a service and how you can actually make it something that's good for them. And I really want to make a company that has that kind of a virtue as well. But my main question, I would say, has to do with how do you gain credibility as an entrepreneur that probably is less of an expert than every other person that you're going to talk to. When you know you have a business, okay, and I don't mean that you have all the forms but you understand for yourself, yes, this is real. What I'm thinking about is not a game. This is a real thing. And then how do I start a business from the standpoint of making sure that my relationships are right in terms of things like not letting the expert tell you the height of your product is wrong. Like, how do I structure it so that if I want to make a big, ambitious business, how do I get to the start of that process so that I look ahead and set things up correctly, and how do you gain credibility when I know what I know, I know what I have, but I also know that it's bigger than me, so I have to look to other people for answers. And how would you go back and do that again, knowing that you still have the same problem of trying to get someone that doesn't really understand your product like you to actually listen to you long enough for them to be on the same page with you?
I think that you would want to come to events like this and talk to these ladies and to everybody and get as many people's help, get in front of as many people as you can and have I'm going to use it might not be the most favorable word, but I call it spin. You have to make it sound awesome, and you are the expert on your product, and that's the thing you have to convey is, I haven't done hair in 20 years, and I just told you guys I'm a hair expert. You probably believe me because I did my hair today. So you have to have, he would call it an elevator speech of something that would draw people in. And I read everything I could get my hands on. Some amazing books that told me how I made a business plan. It was 35 pages long. So there's a lot of seriousness to it, but they both have businesses. I just do real estate now. They can help you with. Thanks. How would you?
So the SBA is an incredible and valuable resource. I would start with the SBA. They can connect you with a lot of different people who can help you. Second, it's always a good idea to consider buying an existing business or a business that's for sale that might not be the same product or service that you offer or want to offer, but that might have the same client base so that you can have some type of pre-existing clients and revenue to maybe take their product and then add your product as an add-on, or find a way to morph their product into your product. But you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes you can just kind of help it out a little bit.
Thank you.
I know too, when I was in school a long time ago, especially in engineering school, but really just in general, the word incubator meant, was for chickens or chicks, and the accelerator, that was probably an engineering term, and pivoting meant what a guy did in basketball. So VCs and angel investors and entrepreneurship, I never heard those words ever until, it's grown to so many different things like the SBA and the Pie Shop and the Fresno City College entrepreneurial program. There are a lot of resources out there now. It's amazing, and it's great to be able to avail yourself of those things. And then there's the internet. There's so many different things you can look at. I think one of the things I always appreciated about Kelly was that she really took the time to try to understand the things that she had to get into. And I can't, I really, that's a trait in her, you know, her DNA or makeup that I really appreciate. And I think that's something that to dive in and to understand as much as you can, it's always good. It's just helpful to have knowledge, right? So.
Thank you. I have a comment to make. When I first made, the very first Mark made it, but my first invention was this prototype that had 1 million working parts, and simplicity is huge in every invention, maybe every business.
And anything.
And it was like, I mean, it all worked, 4 wheels moving at one time. In your hair though, like that's too many wheels.
Yeah, right.
The day that at my focus group, which was college presidents and college girls, all in between, and they all loved it, but what they loved most was this little single Buffett.
Yeah,
And that's the thing
yeah.
that became the thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. I call them elegant solutions, the ones that are the simplest, that do the most. That for me, that's joy for me in my profession. But yeah, that's a very good example. Another question.
I just have two. Okay, anyways. Hi. I'm so nervous. But I have to ask you, it's like something that's so important to me. My name is Ashley Fierro, and I am a future ambassador for a company called It Works. We're famous for that crazy rap thing and coffee. Anyway, so my two questions is, how important do you guys think self-development is? How important do you think self-development is? And I don't know why, but this has been coming up a lot. Like, yesterday I heard about it from something, a YouTube channel, and today I heard about this on another YouTube channel, and it's crazy. But dream boards. How important is self-development in dream boards? Why is it that why is that visual effect so important? Why can't I just know in my head what it is that I want?
I'd like to take the self-development.
Sure.
Okay, yes.
I associate self-development with learning. And people that know me can attest to, I work a lot, but when I don't have to work on what I'm supposed to be doing, I'm at my computer doing research, and I'm impressed with you because it makes such a difference. If you do things that you're always learning, because that's automatic self-development. And it doesn't always have to be tied to business. It can be tied to something you just enjoy doing, and sometimes that turns into something that really works with business. And I'll give you an example. When the internet first started coming about, I remember when I would get so excited with, "You've got mail." Now I hate it.
I remember.
Now I hate it. But that's how long I'm obsessed with technology. And by being obsessed with technology, it does a couple things. It keeps my mind fresh. It helps me look at things differently because most of the time it doesn't work. So you got to figure out why it doesn't work and figure out how to make it work. But then in doing that, I was an early adopter of Twitter, for example. And people would think, "Why do you have Twitter? That's so silly." Well, what I ended up doing is I'm learning about it. I thought, well, you know what, for my guys, because I have to monitor traffic all the time, because I've got all these trucks on the road, and I don't want my crew to, first of all, be stopped because of that, or delayed getting to where they're going. But I also want to make sure it's not on one of my jobs, or involving one of my trucks. So I started tweeting traffic, more for my own reason than anything else. So I tell my guys, follow me on Twitter so you know. So as time went on, more and more people that I know would say, "I love that you do that with the traffic, because now I know not to go this way or not to go So something that started out as just something that was fun, I was trying to understand it, ended up becoming a very key component of some of what I do, not only for my staff, but for as a community, a public service benefit. So never stop learning, ever. You're never going to be where you know everything. And I love to learn, and I don't care what it is. I'm trying to learn. We're doing smart home. My husband loves this. Google, turn on the lights. Hello, Google. What do I call it? Oh, this was Alexa. So I have stuff all over my house, and I love it. And that's my relaxation, but yet it's beneficial to me in what I do as a business owner. The dream board is my house I want someday on the coast. That's always on there.
My dream board was my business plan because it had a trajectory of what I thought I really felt like I could do and why. So it was substantiated. And then lots of pictures of like, Carrie Underwood was one of my first customers. Probably it was her agent that just wanted free bumpets. I don't know. But, you know, American Idol wore them, and so I would put all these pictures, and I would just think, it's going to be so big. So that's sort of like my dream board. And I would always aim for big stuff.
Any other questions? No, we prefer to use, if you don't mind, I'm sorry. We're trying to pick up everything for the podcast. Dan's getting his workout in today.
Can you hear me? Is this thing on?
Yes.
Thank you for your time, ladies. You mentioned hiring professionals, and obviously that makes sense as you grow. But when it's between buying more product and hiring a professional, we're in that place. What do you suggest from your experience? Do you go with less product, more professional help like marketing and sales, or do you try to develop your product more? What do you suggest from your experiences?
Well, that's a really hard question because it depends on the product and what you can, if you can sell some and then meet your demands. It's such a juggling act.
Right, because you have to keep ramping up, right? You can order,
Yeah.
let's say, 1,000 units, you sell through it, but then, in order to continue going and continue
Yes.
selling, you either need to hire somebody to help you with the selling and the marketing, or buy more product.
Right. That's a really hard and a really specific question that depends on what it is. Like sometimes I could sell something to HS in Australia, but I didn't really have any product. But I figured we'll make it, but if I didn't have enough. So I think that one thing about Mark, and probably these ladies as well, but I know myself, is people are always calling and then being very specific. So
I think
that's what the pie shop is for.
Well, yeah, and I tell people all the time that if you don't have cash, you don't have a business. So and that's what we're talking about in a way is cash flow. And so it is definitely a business decision. And you can have all the sales in the world, but if you don't have cash in the bank to make payroll, you're done. So it's a careful decision you have to make.
More specifically with physical product, where you have to move widgets, right? You need to order
And
the
so
widgets,
then-
there's lead time.
Right,
it's
and then hopefully you can work with your vendors to extend terms, but you don't want to extend your terms. I mean, you can actually put yourself out of business by trying to extend better terms to your customers. You could go from being, I'll make my customers happy by having 60-day terms instead of 30-day. Well, then in 30 days you're out of business because you don't have the cash flow. So she's very right. It's a specific question for the specific circumstance. It's a judgment decision always. Do you spend the money on the expert? Do you take a loan out? I mean, can you get a loan? Do you pull your credit card out? Do you rob a bank? I mean, so.
Robbing a bank is fast and it's the most profitable.
Yes, if you don't get caught.
But it
So-
doesn't last, you still run out of money.
Yeah, probably the best terms. But anyway, so the decision's it really depends on the circumstances, and that's really what she's saying. But it's important to think through those things, to make the right decision. If you're buying stuff from China and it comes on a container, it's 30 days on the ocean, let alone being stuck in customs or in the port. So just you have to look at all the aspects.
And also one thing is with any new business, I think you put in such an inordinate amount of hours and effort and time We couldn't have done it. There's no way. We got to almost broke so many times. When that lady fired me, I left out a big part. I had $3,000 in the bank, and my house payment was $900. And I mean, that's it. So it gets down to the nitty gritty, and if you believe in your product, you'll figure out a way and call, like she was saying, network, ask folks.
Yeah.
These ladies are
So you
always.
just make a call and you go with it, and then next time you make a better call, hopefully.
Well, yeah.
Or hopefully, hope it's a good one.
Well, and about having that network in place, if you have a good relationship with your vendors, then maybe they will extend your credit out, or your bank's, nice, maybe they'll give you a credit line, or so, or there's all
Now
sorts
we
of,
know that's an option, so that's,
well,
thank
yeah.
you for that.
Or maybe you get a grant, or, you have a rich relative, or like, but it's just you do what you have to do to make it work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
I got a question for Deena. I'm just curious, because you never told us the end of the story. How much did you party the first day when you bought the business?
Well, we didn't, because from the moment when I was driving back across the bridge, and I understood how much responsibility I had just taken on, it was, this super fun-loving, happy-go-lucky college girl turned into, scared, just fearful of any type of failure you could possibly imagine.
So I guess that kind of brings my actual question, which is, I think all of you mentioned fear of failure. So what is, I don't know if you could put it on a scale, but what is the decision? Or what's kind of your mindset? Is it more fear of failure based, or is it optimistic based? Like, how do you guys kind of look at your days and your lives?
Well, fear of failure motivates me, and in our industry in California, I think, we're both in male-dominated industries. I think 3% of owners in our industry nationwide are female. In California, the average turnover for a ground transportation company is 2 years. So 31 years, I'm like the grandma of the industry. Love of yourself, respect for yourself, love of your company. If you know that what you're doing is good and you can serve other people, you have to make it work. And you have to be smart. Sometimes just putting in more wasted hours after the hours that you've already wasted is not always the best idea. Sometimes you have to, this is why I said 2 hours a day to think, to be peaceful, to not be texting and looking everything up online, to truly just sit and think. When people go on vacation or when they wake up in the morning, you'll always hear them say things like, I had the best idea when I woke up. I don't know when you thought about the bump it, but it was probably during a moment of relaxation, because that's when when the answers to our problems and concerns can come to us. But if you're always running around to get small tasks done, you just can't see the big picture. And I will tell you, I love this woman's story. I've never met her, and her story has been inspirational to me since I've heard about her.
Talk about determination.
And I think it's optimism, but I'm sanguine. So when I'm around people, it's all happy, QVC teeth, I call them. But you know what? At night I'd get home and I'd be so serious, and a lot of times I would cry because there's so many failures. So fear of failure is every bit as motivating as optimism. And every morning you have to get up and say, I'm going to start all over again.
Yeah.
So it's a hard road, but it's so well worth it. I mean, everybody who has their own business, look at it, it's worth it.
to all of you, like what happens like when you have like really like the fear of failure? Like how do you deal with that? Does that like help you and drive you to do more, or does it like kind of like pushes you back to rethink like, is this the right thing that I'm doing?
Both. It drives you back and then you say, oh heck no, but maybe with 2 L's, and you get after it. And you just have to keep doing that. And what was the rest of your question? What after goals were met? Well, then I had quite a bit of income, and so I invested it wisely. And I'm a real estate broker also, so that's what I did, was invest in real estate. The trajectory of my invention, I knew it was going to be a bad product, so I knew it would only have a 6-month to 2-year life, and it had a 1.25-year life, and it was exactly as it planned, except it was I made about 10 times more than I had hoped for. So, 20 times more.
More questions? Okay, so once again, I appreciate everybody being here. I have to be reminded of this because I'm not really well versed, but a social media little challenge here for you guys. So I would appreciate if you did whoever takes the best picture and posts it on social media, which would be #ThePieShop, will win a small prize. So I appreciate you guys all being involved with that, and it'll help spread the word. It's amazing how easy it is to spread the knowledge of what goes on nowadays through social media. So here we go. Deena, put that cell phone down. All right, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.